items in committee, and some of those are, council members have asked for some of the items to be taken out. So the first item, which we have a written update on the Loudon Avenue widening project, and I'm looking at Councilmember James because I know this is a written update, and correct me if I'm a little off base on this, but I think this project is almost finished except for working out the wall, the Warfield Place wall issue, and the punch list.
Yeah, and pretty standard as far as the punch list is concerned. That's, normal process. The only kind of just a tiny hurdle has to do with the walls, and they are working it out through the neighborhood association, but there was an initial design and plan for the walls, or an idea at least of where the walls would be. These are historic walls that the neighborhood wanted to be sure remained, and then when the actual work was done, there was no place for the walls. So they've really been working with the community, the neighborhood there, the neighborhood association, the residents along Warfield Place, to make sure that what they do is respectful and in consideration with what the neighbors wanted. So it is being worked on. I feel like that there will be a near completion very soon, or that we're near completion. I think it's all going to work out fine. We'll just continue to work together with engineering to make it happen.
Very good. Are you comfortable then with this being the final written report to our committee?
I would prefer that we see a final decision on when the Warfield Place entrance wall is complete. I don't want to leave it out there dangling without a place to report to.
Do we know if that'll be a month or a year or?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'll probably ask them. Our next meeting won't be until after break, I think, August. So we'll ask them to come back and give us a progress report. How's that sound?
Yeah. Hopefully, the next meeting after break will be the final report.
All right. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And there is, just to let everyone know, we've not been able to get the agenda loaded onto the electronic screen. So if you wish to speak, just raise your hand and I'll put you on the list and get to everyone. The next item is the downtown master plan. And what I thought we would do is we're going to get a status report. There's 16 recommendations in the master plan, and we wanted to get a quick status report. Some of them have been implemented, some are in the works, and we'll also get kind of a brief overview of the form-based building guidelines, because this issue is one of the issues that the Joint Planning Commission, Planning Committee will address in its joint meeting on June the 30th. So this will kind of be a prequel to that. And we'll get into depth. I know that Chris King has some good things planned for June the 30th for at 9. It's June 30th, joint planning meeting or workshop is at 9 a.m. And so with that, Chris, if you want to give us whichever order you'd like to do these, form-based building guidelines first, or maybe status on the 16 recommendations first, it's up to you. What would be? Paul, Paul,
well,
do you have a comment?
Under the status recommendations, as you're aware, Harold can't be here today.
Yes.
I have distributed status, and I'm not sure as of what date, but this is 18 or so page document. The first page is the recommendation right from the plan, and then following that is a status of each of the recommendations. So there has been some work on all of the recommendations. In fact, one has been completely implemented, the creation of the parking authority.
Yes.
That being said, I think either myself or Chris or Barb, somebody can probably address your questions, but rather than giving you a formal presentation, I would suggest that if you have any questions, we can try to address them today, but the more appropriate thing may be for Harold to give a presentation at the August meeting. He's prepared after today's meeting to make himself available for each of the planning committee meetings for the rest of the year.
Councilmember James and then Councilmember Lawless. Do you have a question about the agenda?
I do. I was not aware that Harold Tate was not going to be here today. And was this unexpected, or did I miss an email or something?
He had conflicting
Yeah,
meetings.
he had a conflict.
Okay. Thanks. That's all I have.
I found that out last week when we had this on the agenda. So, did you have a question about the agenda?
Well, I'm not sure if it's about the agenda or about my thoughts on the downtown master plan, since I was the one that brought this forward. And it was placed on the agenda a month ago, so I'd like that clarified.
Why don't you give us your thoughts on the master plan, and then we'll hear from Chris on
Okay.
based.
The downtown master plan was adopted by the Planning Commission.
Yes.
But as a whole, it was never adopted by the council. So I did a lot of work on how we could make some of these things, rather than suggestions or whatever, what kind of ordinances would need to be put in place to make sure that they moved forward. I then came to the conclusion that it might be a better approach to pass a resolution to adopt the downtown master plan in its entirety and move that forward to the full council for a vote, and then take the time to look at what kind of ordinances would also give it some teeth. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I
Okey
think
dokey.
this committee
I love
has
to make
not-
sense.
Yeah, it makes good sense. This committee hasn't really, we've looked at it once, and I thought the update would be good because some of these are implemented.
Yes.
And I thought it might be good for the committee to know the status of different recommendations.
Yes, and I think an update on what, but still, we can still pass a resolution to adopt the downtown master plan in its entirety, as the Planning Commission did as a council. So that would be a resolution, and then we can work toward any ordinances that may need to be put in place to assure and ensure that those things happen.
Any other comments?
If they're needed.
On the agenda or the idea. Now, okay. Yes, on the subject.
Excuse me, what? Well, we could, but the downtown master plan, just like the bike and pedestrian master plan and other master plans that have been put together, have been adopted in their entirety. So by doing such, all we're saying is we're following the Planning Commission, and as a council, adopting the downtown master plan that, you know, hundreds of thousands of hours and dollars were spent putting together, and that the Planning Commission itself has adopted in its entirety. Is your
Can
mic
you use
on,
your
Julia?
microphone, your microphone? Thank you.
I was doing eye to eye, and I said I was at all the council, all of the master plan meetings, and Air St. Gross was the consultants, and they had an agenda which they pretty much rammed down everybody's throats, and nobody seemed to want to stand up to them whatsoever. And so there are many issues embedded in that master plan which just won't work in Lexington for a lot of reasons. And I think we need to determine what those are before we give our stamp of approval to them.
Councilmember Beard, one of the reasons I asked Chris King to give an overview of the form-based building guidelines, which is one of the recommendations, was because I thought what might help us get to where Councilmember Lawless wants to go is if we could see the update, know what we've done, and then have a brief overview of each recommendation, we might be ready to adopt.
That may be the case, but that was the part I wasn't getting, was the brief overview part.
Yeah.
That, for instance, we've come to an agreement on one-way streets as to how we might phase that in as we go along, step by step, and at some point we may decide that that's enough or we're going to the next step. But if we go back and do this, it says convert all one-way streets to two-way, and all is the operative word in there that bothers me.
Well, that was within the boundary that was defined as that covered the downtown master plan.
I understand.
Okay.
Councilmember James, you had your hand up.
Yeah, since I've been on council, done a lot of looking at the role of DDA, and established by Article 40 of our Code of Ordinances, the DDA is an authority. So I'm really concerned about, we talk a lot about micromanaging, and I think we had a similar conversation when Gary Means presented about the parking authority, and what role do we have as council when we've given an authority to an entity to do something. And I want to make sure that if something's been passed through Planning Commission, is it really our role as a council to vet each one of these items, or does that authority then have the power to move forward with blue sheet processes and everything that's been set forth in our charter, that in our Code of Ordinances that allow us to just allow that entity to move forward? I feel like everybody's saying they're waiting on one or the other, but I think the Article 40 is very clear and establishes DDA as an authority, and I don't know what people are waiting on. I can't really figure it out, and I don't know if we're having a conversation about something that is not really within our authority at this juncture to converse about.
It's sure
Well,
more in
one
our
of the-
authority than it is the DDA's, I think, at this point. We don't know exactly what level. They're a development authority. Now, I'm not sure exactly what development means as it relates to the creation of the downtown development authority.
Have you read the Article 40 of the Code of Ordinances? It lays it out very
At some
clear.
point, I have, yes.
It lays it out pretty clear, and it's everything that's established within the master plan. So I feel as if my interpretation, and maybe we need a legal interpretation, but I feel as if the processes they're going through, same as parking authority, they are given that responsibility, then their process is then to bring items individually through a blue sheet process, the administrative process, which is declared by our council rules, to bring that item forward. And at that time, then we vet each one of those items. But to micromanage an issue because we feel like we have the right to do that, I think this is one of the cases where we clearly, by the establishment of that article, I think it's section 2422 or something, we don't really have that, I don't think we have that authority. So it's pretty clear, and we can bring that forward and review that, but I'm concerned, first of all, that we're here without the person that's the executive director of that authority talking about the situation. Are we going to have to talk about this again? And we have a lot of other items in planning committee that we could be discussing. is this going to take up another meeting in August or September where we could be using that time for something else?
Well, I think it's certainly up to any item that a council member moves into committee. This committee can decide what it wants to do with it. That's why this is on the agenda today, is a council member Lawless moved it into committee. I guess my first question would be to ask if the committee wants to do anything with the update. Do you want to know, I mean, this is the report of the update, and some of these things are done without us adopting the master plan, because they are moving forward on their own. And so I guess that is an important question. And I saw Councilmember Feigl, and then we've got Feigl, McCord, Stinnett, Ellinger, maybe. Councilmember Feigl.
Obviously, I'm coming in on the tail end of this process. I guess it's been going on for quite some time. But it would just seem logical to me that the committee would take a more detailed look at it, particularly if it was going to impact ordinance changes. And, I mean, if in fact we're going to create ordinances to make this enforceable, then I would think that would be the job of this committee, is to kind of consider those ordinances before it went to council to pass as a total package.
Thank you. Councilmember McCord.
I'm going to let Councilmember Stinnett speak first, and then I'll follow up to what he has to say.
Councilmember Stinnett.
Thank you, Chair. I guess my main concern is looking down this list is how we're going to implement this list. Because, for instance, the fourth one, increase residential housing units in downtown. Well, what's that mean? I mean, is it 1,000? We need 1,000 more units, and once we get 1,000, is our goal met? I mean, we need to have measurable goals on each one of these in order to feel some sense of accomplishment as we go along. So, I mean, I kind of, and Leon, like what Julian said, maybe we need to go through each one of these and vet out what our goal is for each one of these. I mean, just to say, change land use, well, what properties really need to be changed downtown? Do we have a running inventory? Do we have a list? I mean, there's a lot of these issues that we definitely need to vet. I mean, create a community center museum for the history of the East End neighborhood. Is that the lyric? Have we already done that one? I mean, we need to be able to check off the list and go down them, and I don't think we've really done that ever as a group, as a body, to go through the list like that. So, I mean, that would be my preference, but I'll be open to those ideas and suggestions.
Councilmember McCord, are you ready?
Yeah, well, I just want to echo that, but I also want to compliment Councilmember Lawless, because, as we've seen, this is sort of the trap that we fall into, is that when we get into situations like Centerpoint, where a lot of people reference the downtown master plan as, well, it goes against that. Well, it's not really been adopted, and so it's not that it goes against it. And I think that what we said the other day about from the outside agencies when we reported out that with the DDA, one of the problems that we've got is that they, in some ways, they're not really an authority. They're more of an advisory. And this document is really evidence of that, because these are advisory measures, but there's no real authority to this. And so I think there's some sort of compromise in where we're going. I think Councilmember Lawless and Councilmember Beard are both right. And as I look down at this list, number 10, develop Vine Street. Well, I've been on that committee for quite a while, and the moment you float one picture of what that might look like, all of a sudden people say, oh, well, that can't work, or why would you do this, that, and the other. So I think what needs to happen is, Madam Chair, is in some way we as a planning committee need to press the full council to recognize that we have a fatal flaw. We have a downtown development advisory document that really does not have a lot of teeth to it, that we want some sort of guiding document. And to Councilman Beard and Councilman Stinnett's point, we need someone, whether it be us or a combination of us and folks inside and outside of government, helping to define these 16 and when we know that we've done a good job with this. So my point is I understand and appreciate what we're trying to do here. We just need to find a way to bring it to the full council and then push for us to dig in this a little deeper. Because just recommending it and saying we're going to adopt it, I think that kind of falls short, and it sets us up for a lot of problems. But getting into the minutia of each one of these, may also cause a lot of problems and put us out into the weeds. But I do think that it's extremely important to recognize through the budget discussion that this is why we had a problem with DDA, was there's no real authority to do any of this, and so we have to, I think, create a policy that defines that authority. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Ellinger.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I just want to know, was Harold supposed to come in today and give us an update on each one of these? Because I would like to find out where we stand on each one. Are we going to wait till the 30th in on that, or is that what we're trying to figure out today?
We asked Harold to come, and he said he could not come. And the 30th is not a day when we will be going through all of these. The 30th at our joint workshop, if those of you who were there recall, we wanted to ask UK to come present their master plan and be in on the conversation about the town gown planning issues, and then the form-based code, form-based guidelines. Those are the two issues on our joint workshop. So, and I guess really, does that answer your question?
It does. I think it's important that we just kind of figure out where we stand on each one of these and know
Yes.
where we're headed with them and what's been done and what needs to be done.
Yes.
And I'm not quite sure on each one where we do stand on them.
And I think at some point it will be helpful for Chris to talk to us about the significance of the Planning Commission accepting the master plan and what that means or doesn't mean.
Madam Chair, I wanted to respond to Councilmember Ellinger's comment. I think that you need to know that when we had one of the breakout pieces of the outside agency, we asked that direct question, where do we stand on each one of these? And we didn't get any kind of real hard and fast answer. It was, well, we're working on number one, we're working on number two. And so I agree with you 100%. There really needs to be, from the DDA, a defined, here's where we are on this particular one. But we didn't get a very satisfactory answer, and that's part of the reason why we had the discussion the other day during the budget link. But I just want to let you know that question was asked directly to them.
Councilmember Lawless, and then Martin, and then James.
I think from my perspective and what I hear and have heard for the last 3 years is, and part of it was sparked with the Centerpoint controversy, is that like many other master plans, they aren't hard and fast, we'll have X number of this by this date, but they are overall, it's an overall overarching plan for our downtown, which we do not have and have not adopted as a council. So my thoughts on it, and like I say, I did a lot of digging about how we can make ordinances that will have teeth, that will help implement some of these things, and some of them won't need no ordinances, and are vague. You know, you're right. Increase residential development. You know, what's that mean? 2 houses, 20 houses, 50 condos. So they are vague suggestions, but if you read the entire downtown master plan, it has a lot of really good recommendations about what we want our city to look like. What do we want, and how are we going to get to that point where we have an overarching plan and vision for the future of our community, and how do we get there? And for some of those, there would be ordinances. So by moving a resolution to adopt the downtown master plan as a council, I think it will, first of all, send a message to the community that has been crying out for the council to do something to guide us in some way, and it's not a law. It won't mean, 640 people have to live downtown by 2010. But it is simply a guidepost for us about the vision for how we move forward and have some kind of plan that we can refer to as we look at, are there ordinances that need to be changed? What do we need to look at with the form-based guidelines? Who needs to be doing those? Because they're really not getting, a lot of these things aren't getting done, or they're getting done by this person or that person. There's not a, so I think it would speak volumes to our community that we as a council are paying attention, that we do want an overarching plan, and that maybe each of us won't agree with each and every one of them. That doesn't mean that they become law. It's a resolution to adopt the downtown master plan that many developers, architects, planners, private citizens, engineers, property owners, we're all at the table working on this for a very long time, and now it's been sitting on a shelf. These 16 recommendations are just a small part of this, but it would give us an opportunity to send a message to the community that, yes, we as a council do have the political will and the vision to adopt something like this. We can always change pieces and parts, and there may be parts that ordinances will then come forward out of this committee. So I still would like to make a motion that we adopt the downtown master plan that everybody has been talking a lot about for 3 or 4 years, 2 years. Okay, but it was worked on for quite a bit before that, so that was when it was finalized. We're never going to have an overall master plan for pedestrian and bike paths, as we recently noticed. We're never going to have 100% buy-in to anything, but this is something that a lot of citizens, a lot of government people, and a lot of council people spent a great deal of time and money putting forth, and was adopted by our planning commission. And I feel like it's important that we adopt it as a resolution. And again, that's just sending a message forward, and then we can look at maybe some committees to look at ordinances that would need to be adopted to make it come to fruition. We could possibly also look at getting somebody, DDA or planning or somebody, to come up with measurable goals and objectives, which we do not have on most of these recommendations. And so that's my motion.
Do I hear a second? Will you repeat your motion?
My motion is that we adopt a resolution, move forward to the council a resolution to adopt the downtown master plan in its entirety as a resolution, not as an ordinance.
Now, I still have Councilmember Martin and Councilmember James and Councilmember Beard on the list, and we still need to hear from Chris about the Planning Commission's action on this. So, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It being my first meeting of the Council's Planning Committee, I don't want to get into too much because I mainly want to listen and find out where we are. But I have some experience in long-range planning, and I worked on Kentucky's first economic development long-range plan, and I wrote the Philharmonic long-range plan last year. And the downtown master plan is a concept piece. It is not a strategic plan, and is not an action plan. It is a visionary tool to help us understand what the things are and why the DDA thinks that these are good things that are good for Lexington. And so my personal thought is that the council needs to first decide if it wants to adopt the master plan, and if so, to do so that the DDA has marching orders that this is what the council wants and it expects the DDA to go do. But beyond that, I think a more strategic document could be developed which uses these 16 recommendations as the goals, and various strategies and tactics can be developed which would be designed to achieve those goals. What do we have to do to change land use? I think this is just the bare skeleton on a larger framework, a very large piece of work, and there are many other components that go under each of these. And but I think in order to give them the direction that this is the direction that the council wants to go, we need to first adopt the framework and then maybe work to put some more information in here. What you'd see in a strategic plan is, well, to change land use, what will we have to do? There might be 5 big things that we would do, and then 4 or 5 things under those things, each of those things that you'd want to try to accomplish in order to really put that into effect. Once you adopt the downtown master plan, you could and work beyond this sort of visionary instrument into a more practical, hands-on strategic document. You could put timelines and action items and assign staff and to do all kinds of things in order to direct resources and to accomplish various things. So I think that's what folks want, is they want to know when folks are saying, well, where's the teeth? Really, it's where's the rest of it? And so this is a skeletal document, and if this in fact was what the planning committee wants to do, or planning committee wants to do, then that would certainly be the starting point to a larger effort to put some meat on the bones and to decide how these things get done, because each of these items are a huge task. And so those are just my comments, and thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, and welcome. You're welcome to visit anytime. Councilmember James, and then Councilmember Beard, excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sarah passed out to everyone that Article 40 I mentioned, which goes back to, this is, I guess, 2001 is when the DDA was created. And this is the sections related to the DDA. And I think if you take a moment to look through this, you'll see that they are an authority. I think Councilmember McCord was on point when he said they're acting as an advisory, especially where we're considering each one of these items and feel like that we can vote on each one of these items. I'm not saying that I would not like the ability to do that. I'm just saying by their authority, it is nowhere in here does it say take all these ideas to council and see if they pass before you start bringing them forward through an administrative process. So I think we just need to be clear. Councilmember Stinnett mentioned something about one of the recommendations had to do with an African American museum or center or something like that. I will state DDA has not assisted, as far as since I've been on council, has not assisted with the Lyric Theater at all. So if that's one of their projects, if they're considering that, there's been no communication as such that was a project of DDA. So I don't know where they're planning African American Center or Museum or whatever it states in there, because they've not been involved in the lyric process at all. And at a time when we really need them, it'd be great to have them on our side, but they haven't participated at all. But I wanted to get some clarity, ask Chris King to step forward, because Chris, you're one of the folks I know that have been in planning for quite a while. And you tell me what went on back in 2001 when this was established, and the relevancy, and I'm only saying this, it's relevant. Let me bring the relevancy to the motion to everyone, because I think I may have to vote no on the master plan if it goes against giving someone authority to do something. So I may have to vote no on that. So I'm trying to get clarity on whether we need to do this. I know there are processes that go through Planning Commission that don't ever come to council and don't need to come to council except for when it's a blue sheet process related to that specific item. So tell me a little bit about the establishment of the authority and whether through this establishment it's appropriate for us as a committee to be voting on something of which they have the authority to do.
With all due respect, Councilmember James, I don't know that I can answer that question, but let me, at the time the DDA was created, I was almost an interested bystander, spectator from my position in employment, Division of Planning. I was working on the Rural Land Management Plan and PDR program primarily in my job duties at that time. But my recollection is that there was a decision that in order to finally move forward a lot of the things that needed to be done for downtown. Downtown has always been a focus. And there had been numerous studies, there had been numerous task force processes, all those kinds of things. But no agency directly tasked to work downtown. And my understanding was that that the DDA was created to be that agency, much like we've talked about a CDC for the East End and Central Sector, a group that's dedicated to that area, the problems of that area, the opportunities of that area, and given authority to work within that area. And that is my understanding of why the DDA was created and given the charter that it was.
Okay, so very similar to the parking authority as well. Are you familiar with how that functions?
Only vaguely, but generally.
Generally the same.
But again, the appropriateness of how the council may interact with that or adopt plans, I really, maybe someone from law could better answer that.
Okay.
But I can certainly clarify to anyone's interest the DDA plan process and how that related to the update of the comprehensive plan and how those things happened.
Okay.
I'd be glad to do that if that's of interest to the committee.
Someone may want to ask that later. At this point, I prefer to not. Thank you, though.
Thank you. I will sit down.
Thank you. And maybe I just need help in figuring out what do we plan to accomplish by passing this? Like what is our intention and what do we expect to happen if we do adopt this? And if we don't adopt it, what do we expect to happen? Because I think if we don't adopt it, we still expect, because it's been through the Planning Commission process, that those things will still be pursued. There's already committees working on that. I don't know what a vote from us does in this case. If it's a make it, break it, let me know that that's what it is. It's going to go on forward without our vote. I don't know that it's within our authority to do that at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Beard, then Councilmember Blues.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Chairperson. I do that all the time. Just blind habit, I guess. Most of those meetings involving the downtown master plan were attended by anywhere from 75 to 125 people. Maybe on a couple of occasions as many as 200. One problem I had with it was that we did not go outside of the developer, architect, downtown planning folks, that realm, and go to Andover and go to other areas of rural Lexington or the suburban Lexington, and attempt to involve those people. You know, our desire is for those people to embrace our downtown also for it to be successful. And they've had no voice in any of this. And, you know, my take is, as they did with the 2040, where they had focus groups and they had a much broader exposure to the whole community of what they were trying to do, and everybody had a voice. This was not the case with the development of this plan. I'll give you one example. One whole evening was taken up by Air St. Gross's recommendation that every single spare piece of land in the downtown area, master plan area, should be built upon. And they then showed slides where they did photographically build upon every one of those spots. And I remember specifically because the chairperson was Tim Kelly at Lexington Herald Leader. His ears jumped right off his head when he saw they had put a building right in the middle of his parking lot, and his employees, of course, had no place at all to park at that point. And there was buildings again over in the the Thoroughbred Park, and the bank I was involved with. And one of the reasons why we purchased that building, that parking lot was taken up by a building. Went through the whole downtown area within the master plan scope, and the idea of presenting something like that to us flawed the whole process for me. And maybe I shouldn't have reacted like that, but I thought, now, here's some folks that sit up in Washington, D.C. and are deciding our fate, so to speak, and they come down here and spend an hour and a half with us with slideshows, and then go back to Washington, D.C., and thank you very much, send money now, and then we'll come back another time. So I was not real impressed with the whole process to begin with. And that's why I think that we need to dig into these various and sundry recommendations and find out just what they mean. Again, as I mentioned a little earlier, convert all one-way streets to two-way. All is a pretty finite word that means exactly what it sounds like. And while I'm not sure that I agree with all, I do agree with some, and we have to find out where that some may end. Some may end up as all, but 'cause I'm not the only decider. But at the same time, I think we have to go through the process. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councilmember Blues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I seconded this motion because I'm sympathetic to the idea that Councilmember Martin, I think, stated very well, that the downtown master plan, excuse me, provides a coherent vision, that it is a concept piece. It does provide us with a many faceted concept or vision for downtown, which is what we need. I agree with Councilmember Beard that we need to dig in and see what each one means, working on particular projects, particular details, measuring what we want in relation to what we can do. What I think a vote to move this forward and adopt the plan by the council, I think what it accomplishes, and I think as Councilmember James's good question asked, what does it accomplish? I think it accomplishes. I think what it accomplishes is to provide us with a set of goals and objectives, many of which are already in progress, some of which we need to be working on. None less important than form-based codes. So I'm in favor of moving it forward because it provides us with, as I say, a coherent set of goals and objectives to work for and work toward, many of which we've already started on. So I think this does provide us with a manageable vision for working on downtown. We should have done this a lot sooner. Should have been to work on this a lot sooner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Lawless.
Thank you. And by adopting this overall guide and vision, we are not putting anything into law. We're not saying all one-way streets have to be These are recommendations. It's part of an overarching vision and guide. And I know I'm repeating myself. I would like to ask Councilmember James, I'm not quite sure, I'm kind of lost on what your concern is with DDA and this. And I guess DDA certainly, they are the ones that kind of spearheaded, my understanding, and coordinated this study being done. But certainly, there probably are ordinances that need to happen, and clearly they have not and could not probably have the ability to carry out all of these. And certainly, like you say, they haven't been involved in the lyric or any part of that. And my hope is that by adopting this, we can also see some other entities being brought into the implementation of some of these things that are important, and also digging into each and every one and see which one. I mean, this is something that should be a living document that is revisited every couple of years at least as we grow and as we move forward. So I guess I'd like, so that's my understanding. Certainly a lot of these things have been accomplished, were not accomplished by the DDA or accomplished by the DDA in a silo without a lot of other people working on it. So
Yeah, I'd be happy to respond to that. I'm not against necessarily the recommendations in the downtown master plan. Again, I love to talk about issues, so I mean, I'm not anti-discussion of issues. But what I am against is the establishment of an authority to do such things, and then it's like telling your, bragging that your child can ride a bike all by themselves and you're holding the seat the whole time. If we're going to give authority and power to an entity, then they need to be able to ride without us holding the seat and then come to us as needed. I agree with you that DDA does not have the authority to pass ordinances. That's our legislative power. That's what we do. That's our responsibility. But if you read thoroughly the DDA document, it does say, number one, facilitate development and redevelopment projects in Fayette County. That it gives specific instructions, develop and coordinate implementation of downtown neighborhood plans, develop and coordinate. So where it might not be, I mean, we can do it, but what does it mean? What does it mean? And Councilmember Blues talked about what it accomplishes. I think it accomplishes that by which the authority exists. So we give faith, we have faith and trust in an entity and an authority to do something. Because that authority exists, we leave it to them to do what they're supposed to do to get to the point where we then engage in the process where we should be, which is the passage of the ordinances and resolutions, transfers of property, acceptance of grants related to certain projects. I think we do have a role, but I don't think our role is to take plans and micromanage those plans or adopt those plans, because Councilmember Lawless said this doesn't put into law anything. Well, if it doesn't put into law anything, why do it? This does not say that that we have all one-ways converted to it. Then why do it? Why pass something if what we're doing doesn't mean anything? And I think we need to give the authority. If we don't want to give the authority to DDA and we want to do that, then we need to rescind this. We need to look at our Article 40 and say, they're just advisory. They're not authority. We don't want them to do anything on their own. So that's my only concern, is that we make sure that we are giving them their authority and placing our role where it should be, because I don't ever want it to be twisted that an authority can't do something waiting on council to do something. We should be brought information, at which time we then do what we are obligated to do, which is to pass laws and ordinances.
Okay. I will call on Councilmember Feigl, and then I would like to turn the chair over to Vice Chair of the committee, Tom Blues, if that is all right with you, Councilmember Lawless? Well, I haven't had an opportunity to speak yet, so Councilmember Feigl.
I was just reading this document that we just had passed out to us, and this is new information to me. And apparently, the powers and duties of this authority are given by the state statute. So I think before we start questioning what we can do and what powers they have, we may need a legal interpretation of exactly what the state statute empowers them to do. And I don't see an attorney here to answer that question.
Councilmember Blues, will you take the chair?
Be happy to do so.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gordon?
Yes. Chris and Paul, I guess these first questions are for you. Is September 21st, 2006, when the Planning Commission adopted the master plan, downtown master plan? September 21st, 2006.
I don't believe so. I'd have to check the records, but it was the principles, the 16 points, with some caveats, were what were adopted by the Planning Commission and enfolded into the comprehensive plan.
Why, at the bottom, I don't know if you got a copy of this, Chris. Maybe, Paul, would you give, at the bottom of the first page of this information, it says, it was the consensus of the Planning Commission that the core principles in the DDA's downtown master plan, subject to further review and discussion, are principles that the Commission will support as part of the comprehensive plan. So if I understand that correctly, the Planning Commission accepted the core principles, assuming that individual recommendations would be further reviewed and discussed. Is that
Certain ones, that's correct.
Is that a correct understanding of this?
Yes, and I have the dates wrong, I apologize, but we did not, the Commission did not adopt the plan until spring of 2007.
Okay.
It could have been, as part of the process, they made a decision, an incremental decision to
Okay.
fold those in the plan.
So they adopted it spring of 2007. Council received it June 5th, 2007. And as I look through these 16 recommendations, probably at least half of them are already being worked on without us adopting the master plan. Number 3, converting streets to two-way, we've already discussed that, and some of that is underway. We've created the parking authority. Number 9, UK and the Lexington Center Corporation are working on that, the integrating Rupp Arena. Number 11, creating an amphitheater, that's in the hands of Lexington Center Corporation, from what I understand. Number 15, this council has taken action on the Cheapside location for the farmers market. And number 16, the Town Branch Trail, as I recall, we included that in the TIF. That's in the TIF application. So it is a little confusing because, and I guess, historically, I think the parking authority came before the master plan. If I recall, it was presented by a former mayor before the master plan was even on the table. So these are they kind of working their way to council through the DDA, or what's your sense of that?
Certainly. If you don't mind, if I may back up and just briefly say
fine.
that the downtown master plan process was designed and carried out by the DDA.
Yes.
And primarily through, I think, private funding, if I recall correctly, that they solicited and had that process.
Yes.
We talked at the very beginning, did we want this DDA process to be something that would end up being in the community's official adopted comprehensive plan? Because of the many downtown studies and initiatives run through the years, none of the others had except for back to the 1960-something downtown master plan. So we decided we would do that. We then, as a division planning, working through the CAO and the mayor's office, provided assistance to the process. We did not run it. We did not manage it. We provided assistance to Harold. We reviewed and engaged in some very spirited conversations with ASG over many of the recommendations and approach that they brought. And in the end, as the product came out, I think that as a planner who has prepared many different types of plan, to categorize this as a vision plan rather than a strategic plan is dead on and really tells you where this process ended up. So it gave us a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to try to do as a way to make our downtown the place we need and want it to be. After the DDA had finished their work, I know we had a meeting between Harold and the chairman of the Planning Commission as we were moving through the process of the comprehensive plan, and agreed together that given comments both from Harold's board, Harold, that everyone was comfortable with the adoption of these major 16 visionary principles to be included in the comprehensive plan, a couple of them with some caveats that they needed additional study before they could be implemented. And the ones that were pretty much dealt with there would be establishing the form-based building guidelines and converting all the one-way streets to two-way. Item number one, changing the land use recommendations of the comprehensive plan. We accomplished virtually that through the adoption of the comprehensive plan, the way we changed how we viewed the downtown and deferred in the comprehensive plan to the recommendations of the DDA master plan. So we feel that that, number one, is by and large been accomplished, yes. And we have been using those recommendations of the DD plan in support of specific zone change and development applications. The form-based building guidelines, again, I can talk about. That's another item on the agenda, and we can talk about where we are and what we've been talking about and what is involved in changing our regulatory process to a form base. We're adding it as a parallel or a hybrid. There's lots of different ways to do that. But that conversation and that research has been ongoing. And as you know, we've been discussing that to a great degree in the last two meetings, a joint between the workshops between the council and the planning commission, which I think are excellent, and that's where that needs to be.
Well, and I think that if I recall, as to whether to adopt the motion or not that's on the table, when this came to planning committee before, the planning committee probably in 2008 decided that since it was, now I'm just sort of trying to remember this, that since it was already adopted by the planning commission, that the planning committee at that time chose not to do anything with it. And so I guess I'm thinking that the motion that's on the table would be more of an affirmation of, like the planning commission said, the core principles rather than the recommendations.
And I think that's excellent, and I think the suggestions from the table that you then take it to the next level, look at each of these in detail, review what has been done so far, what needs to be done, what should be done, and then to set a more strategic action plan is an outstanding idea, and assign responsibility and accountability for that. I think would be a very beneficial and would show the community that you are moving forward. I think there's a lot more that's gone on than people know, and there's a lot of things in here that people think are in here that aren't in here, like many big visionary documents, and to have a full discussion of that, I think is excellent.
And I notice Harold Tate has arrived. I know you had conflicts today. The motion on the table, Harold, is to adopt the downtown master plan in a resolution form. And my question to you would be whether you feel, as the Downtown Development Authority, do you feel you have the authority to go ahead with the master plan anyway?
Yes, and we have been, and I think that's one of
what
the
I
things Chris was
thought.
indicating, is that we've been moving ahead with these recommendations, because some things don't require,
Council.
something from the council.
Right.
Some we do need help on. And just like last spring, just not too long ago, we worked on the one-way versus two-way. So that was another thing that we could, say we got worked out through the council process. Working with Chris, we've been able to create many new zoning categories, and there's going to be more. I mean, that's going to be an ongoing process. So I think the documentation, I believe, that was handed out to you all. Did you all get a copy of this? Okay. That's kind of like a summary of where we are at this point on each of these recommendations. And you'll see that when we did the streetscape plan, that took care of many additional items in the recommendations as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Most welcome.
Well, we have Councilmember Lawless again, right? And, or not? No. Okay, Councilmember Blues on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add here that I think another very important thing that we accomplished by moving this forward is that we put this master plan within the council's area of responsibility, so that we can go back to the Division of Planning, other divisions. We can go back to the Downtown Development Authority, so that we can say, we want to move forward on this. We want to work on this particular recommendation. We'd like an update on this particular recommendation, and so on. It affirms the importance of this body of goals and objectives, and it does speak, I think, to and sends the message to the community that we are indeed serious as a council about moving forward with our with the downtown, which is all of the citizens' main concern. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Beard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. See, that's much easier. I guess this document here is what gives me somewhat of a problem. And the bold down at the bottom of that document, there is a qualifier in there. So I'm not sure that the Planning Commission, if this is exactly what the Planning Commission did, actually approved the downtown master plan and adopted it, because it says subject to further review and discussion, which means that they weren't totally sure on some of these items, if not all, and thought further discussion was needed at their level. I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, so that, and Harold, you may know, or for that matter, Chris may know exactly what that means, and whether that was something that was added as an afterthought, or was there some qualifying comments made by the Planning Commission? Because I mean, you can't have it both ways. You either adopt it or you don't adopt it. It's not, you can't have a definite maybe.
Right. This isn't the exact language that was adopted by the commission. This is a summary that was prepared by Harold for you all of what was done, and I can get the actual language. But let me give you an example. When we talked to the Planning Commission, let's use form-based codes. It's that one. Everybody said, there's a lot of buzz around that around the country. There's a lot of interest in doing that. There has to be a long-term commitment to that. First thing you have to decide, you're going to do it, you're going to fund it, you're going to fund the studies, you're going to fund the staff. You follow it all the way through, you have to go into it. And also, if you see, the consultant made specific recommendations on 6 character elements. Well, that barely scratches the surface of what a true form-based code usually does. And even within that, there were questions. If you took these principles and applied them to certain existing downtown buildings, for instance, you might find that some you didn't like complied, some you did like didn't, when we did those kinds of reviews. So our feeling was we weren't going to take his recommendations of his firm as gospel and turn it into law immediately. Planning Commission said, we need more study, we need more buy-in from the community, and therefore, we like the idea. We think it has merit, but we've got to take an ordered step process in order to get there. I think the same thing was true about the 1- to 2-way streets. There was a lot of interest. There was a lot of support among the Planning Commission for that, but there were no cost figures. The Planning Commission had no control over any budgetary aspect of that, and therefore, that's the council's decision primarily on the cost that would be associated with it. We did fund a transportation study that showed that there would be more congestion, and whether the community would agree that in order to go two-way, having more congestion downtown was a good thing or a bad thing. So again, that's where we were in 2007. They liked the ideas, they liked the vision. They weren't necessarily sure about some of the details that the consultant had recommended and felt they needed further study.
Well,
I think that's been going on.
That really is kind of what I've been saying all along in vetting all these issues. If they, in fact, weren't 100% on board with it, they did not adopt. I mean, it's contradictory to say that they adopted something if, in fact, they've got 14 weasel holes that they can slide through to...
Well, I wouldn't call them that. I would just call them as, on anything, it's like supporting the idea. How can I explain it? I guess I did. That they liked the idea, they liked the direction, but they didn't necessarily buy into the details that were expressed in the plan on how you get there. It's kind of like I might decide a vision, I'd like to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. Okay. That means then from there,
2 out of 3 isn't bad.
Well, I'm neither healthy or wealthy, and so I'm probably 0 for 3, but we'll go with that. And that's a vision. And strategically, I might say, okay, you've got to stop having lunch at Sam's hot dog stand, or I need to bring a salad. I need to exercise more. Measurable, identifiable things. So, I might choose to exercise more and still eat at Sam's. That's an option. And I think that's the kind of approach that that folks on the Planning Commission were thinking about. They were very supportive of the process. They were very supportive of the vision for downtown and very supportive of most of the specific principles. But on a couple of them, they felt, and I think also the DDA board, because we did consult with Harold, that they felt that some of these needed more study as well.
Thank you, Chris. Again, this just reinforces what I'm saying about us having to do some front-end work before we put a rubber stamp on something that actually is somewhat contradictory in the way it's worded anyway.
Thank you. Councilmember James.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, this is great conversation. I think typically I would love it to be able to have this kind of feedback and interest on all issues in Lexington. I'm very involved, very engaged, love it. Think it's very important. The role in which we're acting today is assuming that DDA is an advisory and not an authority. And I think we need to be cautious and very careful in what we're doing. What we accomplished by doing that, we can all be cheerleaders for certain issues. I don't think it takes it off my radar if it doesn't pass through committee. It's been on my radar since we got on council. looking for this, and we've talked about it in many different facets. So again, if I vote no today, it doesn't mean that I don't support the things moving forward. I just want the authority to be, think about the way it's set up. They have an advisory board. Why would we give an advisory board an advisory board? So an advisory board has an advisory board to advise them, and then they advise us, and they come back, and we go to the committee, and then we advise council to move forward. That just, they're supposed to be an authority. They should be working forward, bringing ordinances forward, just as they did with Streetscape. It was a recommendation. We heard a lot of complaints that we didn't hear a lot about what was going on with Streetscape. It's very controversial, and one of the intentions of authorities is to take the political aspect out of it and to do what's right for our city as a whole. And I think it happens with parking, and I think it should happen with downtown development as per this statute, if that's what we want. If we don't want that, as set forth by Chapter 58 of the statutes, then we need to rescind anything that we have that establishes our authority, establishes ours. We can rescind that and create an advisory board of folks that talk to us about downtown development. So again, let's just be clear on what we're doing. And it's not that I'm anti any of these projects. I just think they either have the authority or they don't. And we just need to clarify that. Thank you.
Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I understand it, the Downtown Development Authority is a quasi-governmental agency. It's what we would call a de jure public corporation. I think similar to the airport, similar to my experience in Frankfurt, something like the Bluegrass State Skills Corporation. These types of agencies are important because you need to give them certain vested corporate authority to take actions, but in the end of the day, they are still agencies of the city of Lexington, the Fayette Urban County government. They are an instrumentality, but they are a corporation that pursues a public purpose for the public and government benefit. These are set up this way for particular legal benefit, so they can take particular actions that are more difficult for just a city agency to take, like like Mr. King's department. They have a little bit more flexibility than a governmental planning department, and so they are set up in many of these ways for that purpose. Why does the council input needed? I think is because the council spends the money. We have funds, and we approve ordinances, and I think that this is a way for the council to basically give direction to the DDA. Just because they're set up as this quasi-public agency doesn't mean that we don't have some stake in it. We have a very large stake in it. It's our downtown, it's our city, and I think we partner with them because they're an agency of us to set the agenda and to reach a consensus about the direction of downtown Lexington, because at the end of the day, they have to come to us for funds in order to pursue that. The downtown master plan is a vision document, and it's not intended to be specific. It's supposed to be very general. The specifics come later, I think, and it is a vision document that in which a consensus is built, and so it's not intended to give specifics about how do you achieve those things, or whether there might be exceptions, or whether there might be a zig or a zag that might be needed. So I guess I would encourage us to the committee to do this. I'm afraid that a vote of no might be a vote of no confidence in the downtown plan, and I think that given that they've already made some progress, they may. I think it would give them clear direction and the city clear direction to sort of move ahead, get their work done, then come back to the council when they need approvals. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Blue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm concerned that there's an impression here that the council should just wait for things to come forward to us based on this plan from the DDA. The ultimate authority is the council, and the council needs to be the leader in this. as Councilmember Martin says, this is our downtown. This is all citizens downtown. We need to be centrally and aggressively involved in this development. And we want to work with Harold, with the DDA on this. And we want, I think, and I hope, we want to send a clear signal that we are crucially involved in our downtown, that we have here a coherent vision statement. It's not something that is, that is a detailed pattern that we're just stamping out step by step, but that we've set up here some serious goals and objectives with which we work with the authority, we work with other entities, we work with the private sector, we work to bring about this vision. So I think it's absolutely crucial that we pass this motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember James.
Thank you. Councilmember Martin said that his thought is that a vote of no is a vote of no confidence, and I think to each person, their vote of no, if they feel such, could qualify that. And for me, a vote of no would not be, and I've already stated, would not be a lack of confidence. It actually is a vote of confidence, because what it's saying is that I'm giving the authority to the entity to take care of that. An actual vote of feeling that we need to babyfy an issue to the point of where we're parenting it is a vote of no confidence. We need to have confidence in authorities or disestablish those authorities. If they do not, we don't want to give the power to them and we would like to micromanage, we could take those back. Dictionary.com defines authority: the power to determine, adjudicate, or otherwise settle issues or disputes. Jurisdiction, the right to control, command, or determine. The DDA, as established by KRS 58 and by our Article 40, establishes them as an authority. We need to allow them to do so. In no way does this, is a vote of lack of confidence, is a vote of confidence. We need to establish the authority, allow them to do, it's already established, we need to give power to them, allow them to have that power, and vote on things as it comes forward to council, not a blanket overall vote of whatever they might choose to do, but what they actually do complete, and then start tracking those things. Thank you.
Harold, could you answer a question? And then I have a clarification for Councilmember Lawless and her motion. In the Downtown Development Authority piece, which Councilmember James distributed, Section 2-429, Item 4 says that the duties of the Development Authority shall include but not be limited to the following, and number 4 says, develop and coordinate the implementation of downtown, neighborhood, area-wide, and corridor plans and policies of the urban county government. Do you see the downtown master plan without council backing as a policy of the urban county government? If it hasn't received official support of some sort?
I think on that, what I'd have to say is, as I said before, although the council hasn't, quote, approved it or endorsed it, we are moving ahead with the implementation of the entire plan as we move forward as a way to develop our downtown.
So if you have a corridor plan that's not, I'm just pulling this out of the air because it's in the KRS. If you have a corridor plan that's not adopted by the council, do you think you have the authority to move forward on it?
Probably no.
Since it's not an urban county government plan? So would you see it as some sort of a, I mean, if the council were to adopt the basic vision of the downtown master plan, would you see that as interfering with your authority?
No, I would not see it as
Or maybe interfering isn't a good word, but it looks like you're supposed to be working on plans that have been adopted by the urban county government,
Right.
not plans that are your plans.
Right. And that's why we have such a close relationship with planning, with engineering, with traffic, and hopefully with you all, so that these plans that are developed, that they are implemented.
I mean, it looks like you can go forward with projects. Projects is a big responsibility of yours, but according to this KRS, it looks like plans, downtown plans, neighborhood plans, corridor plans should first be policies of the urban county government.
Just like the streetscape plan was.
Yes, okay. And then, so Councilmember Lawless, is the intent of your motion is to adopt the downtown master plan in resolution form. Is your motion to do this in detail, or is it to do what the Planning Commission did, which was adopt the core principles for future implementation brought forward by the DDA? I'm trying to understand the intent of your motion. Is it to adopt 16 recommendations, or is it to adopt an overall vision?
It is to adopt the overall vision.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Vice Mayor?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I'm trying to get my arms around where we really are on this myself, and yep, there is a motion, and let me kind of put it in the context that I feel like, and I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask Harold. To me, this action by this council would be enormously important and symbolic, and largely that is what it represents. Harold, the concern that I've got is that, and from the comments that I hear from you, it's sort of like, well, we can take it or leave it. It really doesn't matter. And I don't really think that's what you're saying. I would hope that's not what you're saying, because I've heard you say that you've been before the council 5 times, and that was used when there were conflicts, actions that had occurred that appeared to be or perceived to be in conflict with the principles of this downtown master plan. So I think we should equip you as much as possible with all the tools that you need to get the job done. So I'm hoping that you are an advocate for our action.
Yes, I am.
And support of the plan, right?
Right.
You are.
Yes, I am.
Okay. So
Can I answer? Can I say?
yeah, sure.
Because, okay, back on recommendation number 2, it says establish form-based building guidelines. It says establish. I'm assuming if you all go ahead today and say we want to adopt this, then we go back and we start looking at those guidelines for you all to come back to the Planning Commission and to you.
Well, let's instead of dropping down on the ground, if we can stay up to 10,000 feet for a second, because I'm still thinking context here. When was the work for the master plan started? When was that initiated? 2006, 5?
6.
2006. So, a lot of energy, a lot of calories went into it. I've heard you say more than 1,500 people were engaged in it. You had a steering committee. And that represented then together, that effort together with the effort of the consultants, all together represented the plan. Right. All right. So I often think when we use the word plan, sometimes we use that language and we think of it as static rather than a living document or a living vision. Eisenhower had a good language. He said, plans are made so they can be intelligently changed. And your challenge, our challenge, is to acknowledge that that's really what this is. As Councilmember Stennett was saying earlier, it's a framework. Within these principles, there will continue to be debate and dialogue, difference of opinion, dissent. We'll move forward on some. We won't get as far on some. We'll drop back on some. So my sense is, even though I don't agree with all of these principles, I don't necessarily agree with, all two-way traffic right now. I still have a belief that symbolically and on balance, this represents a really, really important document that we should embrace. And so I just want to make sure that we were on the same plane, that you're not take it or leave it, that you really believe that all this work that's been put into this and the fact that you've been using it as a template and a guide, that you would be even better equipped, we would be, to achieve the pillars that we have said, imaginative and innovative urban planning, through the council's active support and endorsement of it.
And I would also hope, just as the comprehensive plan, we review it every 5 years. We would do the same thing on this.
And we're part of our motion could be that it's time up for reset, for reevaluation, right? I mean, you're in the 5th year already.
That's why I mentioned
I would certainly endorse that it's as much as we all have said the value and importance of the urban fabric is, as the downtown is to our economy, to going forward, that it's that part of this plan means renewing it, taking a fresh look at it.
Councilmember Ellinger.
Thank you, Chair. I guess just to sum up, I would be voting for this if I'm for the concept and the vision, but I wouldn't have to necessarily be for, as the Vice Mayor said, all one-way streets or two-way streets in. So I still might not agree with everything, but I agree with the vision and the concept. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Feichel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To follow up on Councilman Ellinger's comment, while we may not agree with every one of the concepts in this document, how will future council members interpret this? If we pass it as a master plan, will they not look back on this and assume that we all were in favor of everything in here?
Councilmember James.
Thank you. I know I've probably gone over my allotted time, but just real quick. I've heard some words of folks that are supporting this vision, concept, and symbolism, and I just want to be sure that we understand. I mean, votes really should be, well, they don't have to be consistent, but it would be great to be consistent. And at other times, we've talked about other projects and other things, and vision, concept, and symbolism have kind of taken a backseat to other things. So it's kind of a I don't know, it's an awakening moment for me to see that at times when we have an ability to really do what is by our law and the authority given to an entity, we decide to support based on symbolism, vision, and concept. And I would just look for consistency in those council members that are doing so. Thank you.
Are there any other council members? Councilmember Beard.
Let me reiterate how I feel about this, and I think I'm not negative about the idea of adopting this plan. All I want to do is work with it a little bit. It was just handed to us when we walked in the door. And, obviously have not had a chance to really dig into this thing and see what it entails. It also, I'm just looking at the agenda, and I see nothing in there about adopting a downtown master plan. I see talking about recommendation number 2 and status recommendations on the rest. And I don't see anything about the adopting of the downtown master plan, so it's probably we're out of order anyway.
Well, I think the number 2 issue is downtown master plan. So, and since the recommendations are all in the packet, I think any motion on the downtown master plan is legitimate, is what I would say. And then Vice Mayor Gray.
Thank you. Although I don't necessarily, I'll say I think I'll change what I was going to say. I think what Councilmember Beard, I was going to say I didn't agree with him necessarily, but then I decided it'd be better to say it in a different way. What Councilmember Beard said about maybe being more informed could be useful. I'm going to vote for the motion, and I would suggest that we also create or maybe set a workshop, especially dedicated to update on the plan. Maybe not just an update, but a review. Let's go back through this thing, and let's spend several hours. Let's go ahead and commit to it if we can, and bring folks who are maybe perhaps newer to the council. It was new to me 3 years ago, so it might be a useful exercise for us to do that through a workshop. So I'll make a motion to that effect after, if that's appropriate, Madam Chair.
Okay. Other comments from council members on the motion on the floor? And the motion on the floor is to adopt the downtown master plan core principles and vision as a resolution. Is that correct, Councilmember Lawless?
Yes.
With no detail of any recommendations. Is that correct? All right. So the motion is on the floor. Will all those in favor please raise your hand, right hand? 8, and those opposed? Well, we have 2 with a third rogue vote. So that motion is adopted. And then were there other motions to come forward?
I'd like to make a motion to create a workshop or to establish a workshop. What's the language I'm looking for? I'm looking for a verb here.
To schedule a workshop?
Schedule a workshop, yes. Ask the DDA to develop it and schedule a workshop with council members to review the history of the downtown master plan.
Is your motion, is there a second?
And yeah, that's it.
Okay.
I would second that.
Does your motion, it's with the full council?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, ma'am. And try to get that as soon as we can after the break.
Are there questions on the motion?
Break.
If not, those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, so the workshop will need to be scheduled after council summer break, maybe toward the end of August or beginning of September. Thank you very much. Now, Chris, I think that let me ask the committee, I think the issue of number 2A might be a moot point. Committee, do you want to hear anything today on the form-based guidelines, or do you want to wait until the workshop on the 30th? The joint workshop? Okay. I do thank you very much, Chris and Harold. Now, if you will turn, council members, to the last page to look at our items in committee. The Councilmember Lane asked me to go ahead and remove the third item from the bottom, which is the extended stay zoning, and he put that into committee, so could I hear a motion to that effect? I'm sorry, did somebody move? Councilmember James moved. Do I hear a second? Thank you. The third item from the bottom, extended stay zoning. This is on the last page of your packet. Councilmember Lane felt that the issues had been resolved. So we have a motion and a second to remove that item from committee. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Are there other items to be removed? We'll keep the Loudon Avenue Phase 1 on and have a report in August. Is there any other issue that council members would like to remove?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilmember James.
I don't have one to remove, but I do have a request that we hear as soon as possible the tree protection ordinance. There are few, you may, I don't read the paper very much, but I've heard that there's been some articles going on regarding some private developers removing street trees along major corridors, and I think that there may be a need to hear this as soon as possible. So
is there a specific ordinance change that'll come forward, or what is what do we specifically?
Article 7. It's Article 17, and it would just have to do with planting requirements and planting requirements, tree protection, and maybe tree canopy or something.
Are you working with law to bring that ordinance change? We could hear it in August.
I can work with law. I think we do have someone from law on our tree board, but I can make sure that law is engaged in that conversation before that time.
So they'll bring forth an ordinance change?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. We'll hear that in August then if it suits. And I believe the student housing task force will be ready in September, but I wouldn't want to be held to that 100%, but that's probably going to be a September item. Any other information about any of the items on our outstanding issues? I think at the end of the year, if both Paul and I try to check with council members who have an issue in committee, and at the end of the year, we need to think seriously about the issues that were put in 2007, whether they can be heard this year, and if not, whether they should drop off or what the future holds. So thank you very much, and I have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Anybody opposed? Motion is adjourned.
Bags for the cleanup. To volunteer yourself, your boat, or both, or if you need more information, call 425-2255 or 311.
Saturday, now through August the 29th, come downtown for the 2009 Artist Market, brought to you by the Downtown Lexington Corporation. Located in the plaza of the Lexington Financial Center, across Main Street from the new Farmers Market location at Cheapside Park, the Artist Market is a small, informal arts and crafts showcase featuring local, well-known, and emerging artists and their works. The Artist Market is open from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Artist registration varies weekly, so plan to stop in each week to see exciting, new, and different artists and their unique works of art. For more information, go to the Downtown Lexington Corporation's website, www.downtownlex.com.
Enjoy great music, food, and fun? Then bring the whole family down to Cheapside Park and Central Bank Thursday Night Live. Thursday Night Live features the best in live local entertainment, great food from local restaurants, and a lively family-friendly atmosphere. The fun runs from 4:30 to 8 p.m. every Thursday through October 15th, and admission is free. Food and drink are available for cash purchase. So if you are looking for a great place to relax and enjoy live music, come down to Central Bank Thursday Night Live at Cheapside beside the Lexington History Museum.
only one place in Lexington where you can enjoy a newly released, kid-friendly movie, children's game, special entertainment, and a petting zoo, all for free. It's Free Friday Flicks at Jacobson Park. Coming back for its 14th year, this family event offers a great evening of entertainment for everyone of all ages. Pre-show activities begin at 7 p.m. and the movie will start at dark. Bring your lawn chairs, blankets, and pack a picnic dinner or purchase concessions from one of the many vendors on site. Please note that neither pets nor open flames are allowed in the event area for the safety of the patrons. Free Friday